me far away under the sycamore trees, in the dark trees that blow. Dark trees that blow.
Welcome to Twin Peaks Unwrapped. I'm your host, Ben Durant, and beside me is
Brian Kazaska. And via the internet, we have
Josh Minton. Hey, Josh.
Hello.
So we got you on because it's done. It's complete. You're finished the Skeleton Key to Twin Peaks. Your book is done. It's available in digital format. How exciting!
Oh my gosh, I feel like I've been Sisyphus pushing a rock up a big, big hill.
How long has it been that you've been working on this?
Nearly 2 years. So I started working on it the second week of the live airing of Twin Peaks season 3.
Wow, that's right. I remember you started putting stuff out on I think Twitter, and like kind of where you were going with it a little bit. That is so cool.
Yeah, in fact, all of that social media stuff, including our shows, by the way, have served as a historical record of the way that my thoughts have changed and the way that I've changed as a result of studying Twin Peaks season 3 so deeply.
That's really cool. People that might not know about the book, can you explain it to our audience?
Absolutely, yeah. So it started off as an exercise to just try and figure out what the heck was going on from week to week as we were all watching it live. And early on, I got the idea of, hey, maybe I can kind of dissect the show up into the various narrative streams. So, for example, Cooper's coming back, the White Lodge's plan, or the Black Lodge's plan with Mr. C, or what's happening in Twin Peaks where everything seems to be really weird versus what's happening with the Blue Rose Task Force. And so I started to track on a second-by-second basis, scene-by-scene basis, what was happening. And the numbers that started coming out of that were really fascinating to me. And they actually became the focal point of how I was able to dissect and view from different angles the entire totality of season 3. And then over time, my opinions, my thoughts have changed deeply, even from the last time that we spoke about this. My overview of what happens in season 3 has changed dramatically.
So there's no Laura's not evil?
Well, so it all comes back to this, doesn't it? So, what happened when I got to that point, and I do feel like I logically laid that out, at least to myself, to the point where if you look at Mark Frost's books and you look at what David Lynch put on the screen, it did seem to intimate that, the quote spawn of Beelzebub would have been Laura Palmer. However, that is a very dark and morose ending that basically drained me of all of my ability to even think or write about Twin Peaks for several months. It was really a super dark, place to be when you're thinking about, something that's supposed to be, in my opinion, now a hero story. So, it took me a few months to really come out of the doldrums of that and put things into perspective. I now believe that all of season 3 is a dream, like many people, and Cooper is the dreamer, and the entire show is his journey to awakening, after he's been stripped of his identity, stripped of his faculties, but not stripped of his goodness. And so I now look at Mark Frost's books within the perspective that it was part of the deception. That there are some truths that are revealed in Mark Frost's books. There are some outright gaps and lies and errors that are revealed, and there are still mysteries in there as well. And I think it was all part of that, what I call the version layer of Cooper's dream, which is the majority of season 3.
Wow. Yeah. So you say the dream, and it's something Ben and myself and all the guests we've had on the show, we've tackled that dream, or this other plane reality. Is it you're inside Cooper's mind or existence, or just other plane of reality, and he's trying to get out? So do you even Do you even think the stuff that takes place in Twin Peaks, or any parts of what we saw in season 3 is not a dream or another reality, or do you think the whole thing is through and through?
I think from the moment of episode 29 in season 2 that Cooper split, that all becomes multi-layers of dream, right? Including Firewalk with Me, by the way.
Wow.
So, that John Thorne should be happy. That's all about, the dream.
I was going to say, have you been hanging out with John here? You've been hanging way too much out with John or something.
But the idea of, this kind of red room layer of the dream starting off in episode 29, and then he starts to learn Laura's backstory in Firewalk with Me. And at the end, we have what I call the Cooper loop, which is the angel. You can save me. You can still save me. So this is where we go back to that whole kind of quote. Laura is the let's just call her the master of the red room. That whole narrative of you can save me, I can't save you, and it starts over and over and over again with is it future, is it past, is kind of the beginning of the loop. And then something happens in the second episode of season 3 where Laura is ripped out of the red room by an unknown agency, let's just say. And her absence, that actually creates an opportunity for Mr. C/Bob to come in and basically put a false dream layer in place. And that's what I call the version layer. So when he's threatened to be non-existent and thrown into, this dream within a dream where Mr. C and Bob are now the orchestrating force of everything that happens going forward. And then, he's stripped of his faculties, he's stripped of his memories, he's stripped of everything but that single golden seed of his goodness. And that's the only shield that he has. And is it enough? And it turns out that it is. So the only thing that I think is not a dream that happens from, episode 29 all the way up to the end is the fade to black. I mean, I think that's the moment that Cooper actually wakes up.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
Wow. Yeah.
That's really something. I like what your book is. You do all these breakdowns and you have all these graphics. Can you talk about all that went into it? It definitely comes off as if you've got a business background, or you really get the idea of charts.
Yeah, I have a heavy analytics background.
Yeah.
I sell enterprise software, artificial intelligence. That's what I do for my day job that actually pays the bills around here. And I tend to try and break things down into a visual component that's backed up by data. And I think when you do that, you have a much stronger argument than just arguing from a point of view that isn't really rooted to data. So that is first and foremost the foundation layer of a skeleton key to Twin Peaks. And I also want to make it clear that this is just one point of view. In fact, on the cover, it even says one experience of season 3. Like I put validity in everyone's experience. And in fact, when you read through there, it's actually much more of a spiritual journey than it is me analyzing what happens in a TV show. I literally felt myself become changed as a result of thinking so deeply about, what I consider to be Cooper's journey back to waking consciousness.
I love all the graphics and everything you put together. Like
these icons, like the blue rose.
Yeah, the icons, the blue rose is so awesome.
There and, yeah.
Yeah, I try to treat it like a work of art, and that was actually what Jeff Lemire said when he first opened the book. He texted me and he says, my gosh, these graphics. He's like, I wasn't expecting this. And I'm like, that's why it took so long. And frankly, I designed everything from scratch to be able, well, except for the images where you see the little thing on the playing card, that obviously all came from Twin Peaks, but the ability to use that when we're talking about a specific scene, I think it's really powerful, regardless of what you believe happened.
Yeah. And the fact that you got a text message from Jeff Lemire is pretty awesome too.
So yeah, he wants to interview me. So he's, you guys are first. Jeff's going to be second.
Wow.
I really can't wait to talk to him. It's going to be a wonderful conversation. Wow. His mind is just incredible.
So if you when this book, are you going to do a physical copy of this book or just be digital?
I am, but I want it to look the way that it looks in the PDF. You can understand that. It was just, I don't want to equivocate on quality at all, which means it's probably going to be pretty expensive.
Yeah.
Which is why it was really important for me to give it away as a digital copy.
And what you should do is take that text you got from Jeff Lemire and put it on the back. You put like quotes of people, what they said about the book. And that, it should just Jeff Lemire, and you should just quote his text. I think that would be great. That's all you need to sell a book.
I told him, I said, this is going to be one of those statements that I look back on at the end of my writing career as a huge milestone. You know, I really, it just made me smile for an hour after I read it.
That is so cool.
And it's really interesting, this breakdown. I mean, you break things down by scenes, and it looks like you like breaking this down by like minutes too, like by getting the minutes and seconds of a scene. And it's really interesting the breakdown that you've go over.
I wanted to be able to let someone, view it on an episode by episode basis, but also there are time numbers in there on the basis of it being a 17-hour, I think 11-minute and 59-second film as well. That's actually the length of time that the show is on the screen, including credits.
Wow. Wow.
So, that way we can start to talk about it in either term, like a particle or a wave. Is it a show that's an hour by hour basis, or is it a 17-hour film? Yeah. And I think there's merit in doing both.
Yeah, more and more, especially with Netflix, when you watch a show and you watch something that just feels like they threw credits in there because they had to, And I mean, Twin Peaks definitely had that feeling. You can get rid of those musical performances and just straightforward have that thing go, and it'd feel like a long movie. Well,
I mean, and consider by the time you get to the end, you've already watched over an hour of beginning and end credits, right? It actually constitutes a little over 6% of the entire screen time that's on there are credits.
That's crazy.
It's weird when you put it like that, right?
Yeah.
So I want to talk to you guys about my favorite, let's just call it a vanity supposition. Okay, so do you remember the part in episode 4, I think it is, that's where Dougie goes into the office for the first time? Does that sound right?
That sounds right.
So the light that shines on Anthony Sinclair's face, and the light that in the next episode shines on the little case files that he's working on.
Yes.
The breakthrough for me on coming out of the doldrums of the whole Laura Palmer is evil section of my thinking was when I thought about that light deeply, and I thought, what if our love, as viewers for Cooper, what we've carried in from season 1 and season 2, what if that's bleeding through the narrative there? And it's like when Nato/Diane put her hands on that machine in part 3 and infused something into it and flies off into outer space. What if she opened up a portal for our love as viewers to bleed through the fourth wall of the show and start to shine this light through Cooper onto the things that are going to help him? And it doesn't matter whether it's true or not. For me, that was like a lock that opened up, and I was able to put myself back inside the narrative, and it still brings me a lot of comfort to think about that, helping Cooper, that my love and your love combined as we're watching it together in a communal effort as it aired, actually bled through the fourth wall and drove the narrative and helped wake Cooper up. That to me is such a cool idea, and I don't care if it wasn't intentional. I'm going to read that into the show forever and ever.
I like that because when we watched the show in Washington, episode 12, the energy was palpable. I mean, the fact when Cheryl and Fenn finally showed up, the place went nuts. And every week, Ben's going, Cooper's going to come back. He's going to come back. And I'm sure tons of people were watching it thinking the same thing. And I like that. I like what you're saying there because it's like what's the word I'm looking for? It's a shared experience. We're all experiencing the same thing. We're sharing our love for this character to come back and having that fourth wall. I kind of like that. It's cool little theory.
It's an interesting way to think about it. One of the comparisons I make in the book is to kind of the ancient Romans and how they viewed the catharsis of going to the theater together as a community. And I don't know about you guys, but I really felt that when Twin Peaks aired in a way that I don't know that I've ever felt about anything that aired on television, not Game of Thrones, not The Sopranos, not Breaking Bad. For me, watching Twin Peaks live was an event that I don't think will ever come again in our lifetime.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. I go back to season 2 and Love and Fear open the door. In some ways, the idea of love, I don't know, is on the side of good. And I don't know. I like that.
I love it.
Yeah, the side of love. And it's interesting, those times of light that we saw or seemed to like to be clues for Cooper, that seemed to be the essence of Cooper. I mean, we can go back to Cooper had case files, and Cooper could always tell if somebody was lying. And when it came to gambling, he was the best gambler when in the essence of who he was. So it was interesting these times where he seemed like things were hinting at, or maybe you're saying love. It was really like the essence of who Cooper really is.
Yeah, it was that golden seed of his goodness. And we all saw how important the golden seed is. I mean, how many times did they show it? For example, part 8, which we can talk about now, I don't believe that was an origin story of, something that's external. I think what we saw there is how Cooper's mind and soul reacted when Bob invaded it. So, Mark Frost is on the record in the Sam Ismail podcast where he basically said we wanted to do some type of an origin story, but he didn't say origin of what. Like, if you think about Twin Peaks as a real narrative that's happening, that's one thing. But if you think about it in terms of what happened to Cooper when this extreme negative force invaded his mind when he split in part 29, it was basically like a nuclear explosion. And I believe what we see happen in part 8 is the corruption of the woodsmen, which are a natural function of the Black Lodge. Look, we all have positive and negative energies inside of our minds, right? And they have to be in balance or else you have a psychotic breakdown. And I think, what we see in part 8 is what happens when an extreme negative force comes in and corrupts the worst part of your mind and turns it against every other part of your soul. I mean, literally down to the point where there is one single golden seed left. And there is a moment there in part 8 where you see that seed come out of the red fireball, and then you basically go into it and it becomes the Black Lodge where the fireman sees the alarm. I see all of that as interconnected, and that kind of counteractive measure that the fireman executed there when he pulls that golden ball, another golden seed out, and puts it inside of the image of Laura Palmer and Cooper's mind. That's the key to exiting the entire dream. And it's hidden inside of a character that's inside of another dream. And he somehow got to get there and take that payload home. And when he does, it blows up the whole dream and he wakes up. I mean, I think that is just beautiful and elegant, and it's something that we can think about as individuals and as a group, that's above politics and all the things that divide us up.
It's true.
Yeah,
it is something else. So it's out there now. How can people find this and get to check out this book?
Yeah, you can go to twinpeaksskeletonkey.com and just put your first last name in. It can even be a fake first and last name. I don't care. And then put your email address in there, and you're going to get a link to a Google file that you can download immediately. It's about a 285-page-ish document, and you can download that, read it on any device. It looks amazing on an iPad Pro if you're lucky to have one. You can probably read it on your phone, but it's going to be a little small. And then, of course, once I put the paper book out, you'll be able to get a copy of that as well.
And now the proceeds of this book. Now, tell us the history about that.
Yeah, so I always wanted it to be a charitable exercise for a couple reasons. The company I work for blesses me with about 9 days a year to donate volunteer time, VTO we call it, to any effort that I choose. It could be a church, it could be a food shelter, whatever it is. Well, I wanted to do it to the David Lynch Foundation because this has been 2 years-ish now that I've been doing TM every day. And gentlemen, I got to tell you, it's made an enormous change in my life, both from not shouting at people in traffic to the way that I treat my family and my children to the way that I treat you and the creativity. I mean, like, it really has changed me, and that's divorced from anything about Twin Peaks or David Lynch or Maharishi, any of that stuff. This is, as a personal behavior, it has changed me for the better in every way, and I wanted to give a little bit of that back in the hopes that someone who needs to learn it can.
That's very cool.
So, yeah, all I'm asking for is quick, little small donations to the David Lynch Foundation. I'm actually not taking any money at this point. I don't want to be involved in the exchange of money. But if you're so willing and have the means, a $5, $10 donation to the David Lynch Foundation is phenomenal, especially if you could do it in the name of the book.
Nice. And last year, we went to the Festival of Destruction, and we got to learn a little bit. about the TM. We saw like this video about it, and I think one of the founders, he was there. Can't think of his name now.
Bob Roth.
Yes, he was there.
They did a video really showing how people are how that's changing their lives and making their lives better. It was a great experience.
Yeah,
one of the essays I have right after part 8 actually in the book breaks down the whole "this is the water, this is the well" in terms of my impression of why that has to do with TM, and supposedly David Lynch came up with that poetry on the spot while they were filming. And I think it is highly, highly connected to the value and the benefits of TM, but also deeply integrated into the darkest part of Twin Peaks.
Interesting. No, I like that. I got to read that. I gotta download my copy.
You do? What are you waiting for? How long?
It's all there for you, man. Totally
how long
free.
has it been available now for? Has it just been like a week or so?
About 2 weeks now.
Yeah.
And it, by the way, it's a living document. So I'm making changes every now and then to that document. So when you download it, go back and download the fresh copy because it's like Hawk's Map. Something that's always alive and it's going to be new for you.
I like that.
That's a benefit of giving it away for free. I can kind of use that as a test audience to make sure I'm editing everything right.
I like that you said that because my copy is a version or a revision 2, and I was like, It's like, is this revision 2 from last time we spoke with you, or this is something that you just recently updating?
Oh, geez, I probably have put in over 150 revisions.
Wow.
Total. Yeah, it's been an enormous undertaking. Probably, one of the hardest things I've ever done.
That's
very cool.
And I'm sure you must rewatched season 3. I don't know, so many times.
8 times now.
8 times.
Wow.
So I the last time I watched it was in a 4K theater on a 110-inch screen with Dolby 9.2 Atmos and just Philips Hue lighting, and I watched every episode by myself. And there were probably 3 times at least where I was just weeping in this dark room by myself. When Margaret Lanterman dies, that's one part.
Yeah.
There are just some beautiful moments in season 3 that they didn't hit me until I was alone in a dark room, surrounded by it from every angle.
Yeah, that's the best way to do it. That is the best way to do it.
Is there anything else you want our audience to know about your book?
Just that it was done with peace and goodness and kindness, and I just want to make sure that everyone knows that I respect everyone's opinion. I'm certainly not standing up and saying that this is the only way to view it, but this is a way that I found to bring a lot of good out of season 3, and I think it absolutely has a strong place in the canon, and that Mark Frost books are important. It's a cry for unity as opposed to the opposite.
Nice. I like that.
So Josh, would you mind reading a little bit of your book?
Yeah, that'd be great. I'm going to read a little bit of the essay that comes right after part 8. It's titled "This is the Water." And these are the essays that basically I call them press pause. So it's about every 4 episodes or 4 parts in the show, I'll stop and then do a little essay on, hey, where are we? It's always helpful to have a signpost on where you are. When I think in terms of absolutes about Twin Peaks as an art form that has crossed nearly all channels of human expression, I consider it a journey of the resolution of this universal trauma of our existence, that we are each born to suffer and die, seemingly separated from one another by space and time, yet doomed to roam together through this milky ether that gives both meaning and insult to our lives with the same stroke. By putting a 50-plus hour visual narrative with several related written pieces into a singular spotlight on the suffering and murder of Laura Palmer, with the ensuing quest of a good man trying to make it right so her spirit can finally rest, David Lynch and Mark Frost, along with all the artisans and fanatics who have crafted the experience of Twin Peaks, have successfully invoked a modern-day martyr's tale that forces us to confront trauma in its most dramatic, its most potent, and its most relevant modern form. These artists have metaphorically placed us back into those theater seats in ancient Greece, where politics and the small insults of daily life fade into the background, exposing our meek personal dramas as flimsy in comparison to the grand spectacle happening on the stage before us. So let us walk into that dark hallway together, behind the door in the boiler room of the Great Northern Hotel, and let us dance with this trauma face to face for a few moments. I want to talk about transcendental meditation, not as religion or a constellation of spiritual metaphors. It's neither of those things, but as a technique for releasing trauma known as stress and TM. Prior to the spring of 2017, I had been vacillating meditator for a couple of decades, using a mindfulness technique of focusing on my breathing before I decided to get serious about my practice, coincidentally, just before Twin Peaks Season 3 started. And years ago, I had read David Lynch's book, Catching the Big Fish, and became more than mildly interested in his view on meditation. My long-term struggle with the teachings of Jiddu Krishnamurti, though, have instilled in me a precursory negative reaction to any system of spiritual practice, and especially any authority figure, which is the way I kind of perceived TM at the time. So I put Lynch's book to the side and didn't revisit it until after Season 3 had aired, when I pulled it off the shelf and gave it another reading. And then after researching TM online and reading the amazing book Supermind by Norman Rosenthal, I realized that TM was a technique, a daily habit like brushing my teeth, that could take me to the next level of my personal meditation practice. But little did I realize that it would also unlock a core meaning of Twin Peaks for me. So when I met with my TM instructor in October of 2017, he drew a few waves on a whiteboard. This is the water. He told us that those waves represent the waking mind, what Bob Roth, the CEO of the David Lynch Foundation, calls the gotta mind, because it's the part of our brain that's always on saying, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. And the mentality of constantly being stuck in the on position is really a sickness of the human mind. In my opinion, it's the inability to withdraw from this position of constant analysis, constant intention of purpose, with no self-reflection or patience or kindness often. That's nearly void of all sympathy for ourselves. It's just a pervasive disease of our spirit, but it's also curable. It's remedied by habit, much like losing weight and getting stronger is a byproduct of daily exercise and dietary control. So the TM technique, in my opinion, is the greatest habit to remedy the sickness that I've come across. And I believe that it's a true proper art that creates a chain of value in Twin Peaks that can make the world a better place. So as naturally as thoughts come into your mind when you close your eyes, you will step onto this mantra, which is a meaningless word that when repeated for 20 minutes at a time, becomes a vehicle for descent into the ocean of your consciousness. Drink full and descend. And it will ultimately become the ocean of all of our consciousness, the source of all creation and being. So if you want to throw in the name of a deity or something like the unified field, feel free to, but let's just sit with it for a moment. So when we step onto that, all of these stresses start to get released, and it's not a figment of your imagination. True physical energy is being released, almost like a massage for your soul. So as those stresses become released from the mind, from the body, the mind becomes active, and it'll attach imagery to those stresses as they float out. And during TM meditation, one is encouraged to favor the mantra as these little traumas are physically and mentally being released, along with an occasional flood of mental images like a rushing river, right? Now, while this happens, we must hold on to love because it's infused into the mantra. That love is like the golden seed inside of Cooper, and it's a daily love letter to oneself. Eventually, the mind descends deep enough to the ocean floor of your consciousness, the same consciousness that unites us all, where the mantra and all the imagery become lost and abstract. There are times in that deep quiet where creative energy so profound will explode in an experience that could change your life forever. The horse is the white of the eyes, and it comes from the deepest mystery that is the ground of all being and dark within. When it comes to deriving personal meaning from season 3 of Twin Peaks, I find the most value in thinking about the golden seed as a metaphor for a pure goodness that each of us is born with. Before we grow skin that has a color, before we are taught beliefs that have opposites, before we start to harm the people who love us most and collect the harm we perceive from their actions. The golden seed is what we must always seek to brush the dirt of living away from, so that it may shine through us and onto those we are lucky to share love with in this life. In part 8 of season 3 of Twin Peaks, we see the golden seed twice. First, we see it within the heart of the nuclear blast, where inside that seed lies the White Lodge, and the bell starts ringing because a terrible evil force has invaded the spirit of the dreamer, and the fireman is activated to execute a counterinsurgency in the 4th and 5th dimensions. The second time we see the golden seed in that episode is when it is infused into the image of Laura Palmer and sent into the missing page layer of the dream. I believe that in season 3, this image of Laura Palmer in Cooper's mind, created by the fireman who is in touch with the universal source of all being, is Dale Cooper's exit from this terrible dream, but one which must be carefully hidden from the extreme negative force that is out to destroy all the good within Cooper's soul. And in order to finally exit the nightmare, Cooper will have to go through Laura's image, set it aside, see it destroyed, and accept that she is dead and cannot be saved. There was another savior who once said something to the effect that no one will reach truth except by going through them, through their image, setting aside the metaphor, the quest, and seeking the stillness within. The story of Dale Cooper, waking from a dream within a dream, is a metaphor for the journey each of us must take to throw off these traumas of our lives, to reconnect with the deep mystery that is the source of all life and existence. Marcus Aurelius was fond of saying, "The obstacle is the way," a stoic commitment to a powerful spiritual journey so sublime in its depth, yet heavenly in scope, that I have often repeated it to myself as I've worked through the mysteries and secrets of Twin Peaks, a commercial television production that has become a mirror into my soul and one vehicle for spiritual rebirth. So before we leave this moment, I feel it's prudent to point out that there is a reason that rocket boosters are ejected from a space shuttle after it breaks the Earth's gravity, because they become dead weight when they stop propelling the craft forward. Art is not meant to be worshipped into a religion, and it is supremely important that as thinking and feeling individuals, we not fall into that deadly trap. There are some who view Twin Peaks through this lens of near religion, and as typically happens, allow it to divide themselves into warring factions with all the political traumas that unfold from there. I would urge you, as a reader and lover of Twin Peaks, to put that aside and focus instead on the war that rages inside each of us. Seek the still point and leave religion to history where it belongs. So as we move into part 9 of season 3 of Twin Peaks, I believed that we just relived the moment that Bob infested Dale Cooper's heart and mind, metaphorically rendered as a nuclear explosion, followed by the corruption of the faculties of his dreams. The Black Lodge, normally balanced in power with the White Lodge, becomes unhinged in Bob's presence, supercharged with the darkest of forces, driven from pure evil at the lowest levels. We see the corruption of the woodsmen as they become burned in the black fire, and we see the moment that the best part of Cooper's nature, the shepherd of the golden seed, embodied in the character of the fireman, takes counteractive measures to secure the golden seed and give Cooper a fighting chance for survival to get out of this nightmare altogether. Laura Palmer is the one. In Cooper's mind, her image holds the key to exiting all layers of this trap of a dream. He must set aside his doomed quest to save Laura Palmer, or he will be controlled through that obsession and forced to exit, lest he forever be falling in an endless nightmare that always ends with him almost saving the girl, but then begins over again with her needing saved all over again. Welcome to the back 9 of season 3.
Good stuff.
Wow, I loved it.
I mean, you've definitely thought about this a lot, and I like the way you've interpreted it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, for your friendship, for your support, and for giving me a voice to be able to share this with the world.
Oh, anytime. We appreciate you. And you know what I love? Between you and Scott and the Red Room podcast, and how we send each other back little jabs like on the podcast. Like I hear Scott, you'll say something about us, then we'll say something about him. It's like podcast volleyball,
right?
Or ping pong. You know.
I also think it's so funny that like Josh, you're like my Brian. I hate to say that I'm like Scott or something like that, but I mean, like...
there's always a Siskel and there's always an Ebert. That is a true story when you're talking about art in pairs.
That's true.
You know, everybody listening, there's no reason that you shouldn't go. The website again, the Skeleton Key.
TwinPeaksSkeletonKey.com.
Okay. There's no reason that you shouldn't go there and just download it. I mean, it's free. I mean, you
and it's living. So any updates, it's like buying a video game nowadays. There's always updates. This is like the first updated book. You have different That's right. So cool.
Yeah.
And in fact, I prefer people read the book or at least thumb through it before they would consider donating to the David Lynch Foundation. I really want it to be as a result of appreciation for the effort and the time and hopefully the skills that went into creating this for them.
And the David Lynch Foundation, I mean, it's doing such great work. I mean, it's helping out military people who have had stresses. It's helping out city schools. I mean, it's doing such good work and stuff that it's something else.
Women and men that have been, involved in terrible physical altercations that have resulted in anxiety and mental stress. I mean, the list is endless in terms of application.
So cool. And Josh, where can people find you on the old social media?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at Joshua Minton. You can find me on Instagram at Joshua Minton. You can find me on the web at jbmintonwriter.com, which is also where you'll download that book from. And then, of course, twinpeaksskeleton.com will take you right there. And please reach out to me. I'm happy to engage online, discuss theory and all that great stuff. But just know that this was done with love and for charity.
Awesome.
Thank you, Josh.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. And if you have a comment, question, or thought about today's show, give us an email at twinpeaksunwrapped@gmail.com. Everything mentioned today, all the links will definitely be in the show notes. So if you don't know where to get the book or the David Lynch Foundation or anything, go to the show notes. Everything will be listed. You can like us on Facebook. You can follow us on Twin Peaks Unwrapped. Also, we're on Spotify. We're on iTunes. Give us a 5-star review. Subscribe to us. And support us at TeePublic. And with that being said, Ben,
we'll see you soon.
It's good to be here in Boston, and thank you very much for coming here tonight.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I teach film. I make films. I would like to know, I'm not a meditator. What does meditation, can you say anything about how meditation might connects to your creative process or might help the creative process of my students or myself?
Yes, I can.
Will you?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
Tonight's talk is consciousness, creativity, and the brain. And if you have a golf ball-sized consciousness, when you read a book, you'll have a golf ball-sized understanding. When you look out, a golf ball size awareness, and when you wake up in the morning, a golf ball size wakefulness. But if you could expand that consciousness, then you read the book, more understanding. You look out, more awareness, and when you wake up, more wakefulness. It's consciousness. And there's an ocean of pure, vibrant consciousness inside each one of us. And it's right at the source and base of mind, right at the source of thought, and it's also at the source of all matter. And Maharishi Mahesh Yogi teaches a technique called Transcendental Meditation. It's a simple, easy, effortless technique, yet supremely profound, that allows any human being to dive within, experiencing subtler levels of mind and intellect, and transcend and experience this ocean of pure consciousness. This pure consciousness is called by modern physics the unified field. It's at the base of all mind and all matter. And they now say, modern science says, all of matter, everything that is a thing, emerges from this field. And this field has qualities like bliss, intelligence, creativity, universal love, energy, peace. And it's not the intellectual understanding of this field, but the experiencing of it that does everything. You dive within and transcending, experiencing this field of pure consciousness, and you enliven it, you unfold it, it grows. And the final outcome of this growth of consciousness is called enlightenment. And enlightenment is the full potential of all of us human beings. And a side effect of enlivening this consciousness is negativity starts to recede. When I started meditating, I was filled with anxieties, filled with fears, kind of a depression and anger. And I took this anger out on my first wife, and after 2 weeks of meditation, she comes to me and she says, "What's going on?" And I was quiet for a moment because it could have been any number of things she might have been referring to. But I finally said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "This anger, where did it go?" And I didn't even realize it had lifted. Now, these negative things like anger and depression and sorrow, they're beautiful things in a story, but they're like a poison to the filmmaker. They're a poison to the painter. They're poison to creativity. They're like a vice grip. If you are super depressed, you can't hardly get out of bed, let alone think ideas, have that creativity flowing. So it's money in the bank to get that beautiful consciousness growing, which is flowing creativity, the ability to catch ideas at a deeper level. Intuition grows. This field is a field of pure knowingness. You dive in there, you sort of just know how to go. You know how to solve solutions. It's like an ocean of solutions. And you can just feel this thing growing. But the ultimate thing for me is the enjoyment of the doing, the enjoyment of life grows huge. I love making films now more than ever before. Ideas flow more. Everybody has more fun on the set. Creativity flows. People look like friends and not like enemies. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing, and it's us. In Vedic science, this field of pure consciousness is called Atma, the self of us all. At that level, as Dr. John Hagelin would tell you, at that level of life, we are all one. We're one. Diversity up here, unity down below. It's a great thing for the filmmaker.
Thank you.